So we have over 40 participants, which is a very sizable number. And I think we should start. So welcome everyone, Jai Bhim. I'm Asang Wankhede. I study DPhil in law at the University of Oxford. And I'm also the organizer of the Oxford Ambedkar Initiative, which I and Dr. Suraj Yangde, who is both at Harvard and Oxford, began with the aim to create an anti-caste culture at the University of Oxford that is reflective of and sensitive towards Dalits and which is led by Dalits. This by no means that we do not collaborate outside of the so-called subalterns and oppressed. Everyone and anyone is welcome to join us, and we work with people irrespective of their caste, color, race, etc. Uh, it gives me an honor to invite welcome Dr. Sumeet Mhaskar, who is a professor of sociology at the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy at OP Jindal Global University. And I'll introduce him formally a little bit later. But the real idea to conceive this lecture, I'm sorry, I'm just going to admit everyone. There are about 10 people still waiting. Yeah. So the real idea to conceive this lecture was after, and the reason to do it after 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks after the general election results on 4th of June, was to discuss a few things which was for a very important and a very interesting general election, the 2024 Indian election. Many people thought and argued that that 400 par, or the incumbent Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party, the BJP, would get about 400 seats in the parliament. But when the results came out, a lot of people also argued that this was a moral and even a political defeat for Modi and his BJP. The interesting insights that came was in terms of the shift in the caste arithmetic, especially of the Dalit vote bank, the coalition politics and federalism through the renewed power to regional parties. It was seen the more regional parties have become powerful. There is a hope for a strong opposition now. Hopefully, they will act as an effective opposition. And the question also arose whether the India Alliance's uh, uh, Nara of Samvidhan Bachao or Save the Constitution, was it embedded in social justice agenda or was it merely rhetorical? To discuss these questions and, of course, many more, we have Dr. Sumeet Mhaskar. Just going to admit everyone. I'm just admitting no people. Yes. So we have with us Dr. Sumeet Mhaskar, who is a professor of sociology at OP Jindal Global University. He received his PhD in sociology from the University of Oxford. And interestingly, as far as I know, he is the first Dalit scholar to ever come to Oxford and achieve that feat of a PhD in any subject at the University of Oxford. He has MA and MPhil degrees in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. Prior to Jindal, he was a fellow at Stanford, Göttingen University, and Max Planck Institute for the study of religious and ethnic diversity. Professor Mhaskar research explores the multifaceted vulnerabilities of workers experienced at the lower end of India's rising economy. He is currently finalizing his book on Mumbai's mill workers' responses to joblessness as a result of large-scale industrial closures. While his academic writings have been published in peer-reviewed journals, edited books, magazines, and working papers, he occasionally writes opinion pieces for Hindustan Times, Indian Express, The Hindu, The Wire, Scroll, The Print, The Outlook, etc. So it's my honor and pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. Professor Sumeet Mhaskar, for joining us. And I now open the floor to you and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Asang. First of all, I would like to thank the Oxford Ambedkar Initiative for putting together this event and inviting me to discuss this very interesting topic, which uh, is going to change the public discourse in the years to come. Of course, it's an important initiative because there are multiple voices, and having an Oxford Ambedkar initiative gives that space to think about Indian society, economy, and politics in one additional direction as well. This is to say that, of course, there are other views which can help us understand Indian society, politics, and economy. But you also need different dimensions to understand same thing. And that's why it's also important to look at the political outcome as well. Because if you look at much of the commentaries after the elections, they largely begin with one kind of narrative that everybody is happy with this result. BJP is happy because they actually managed to retain the power. Congress is happy because they have now reached almost 100 member of parliaments. And then there are regional parties who are happy because they have done a fantastic performance. Now, this is a very, in a way, just a little layer of reading of the outcome of Indian elections, I feel. And then there are more layers, and one can, of course, bring them into the discussion. But what I'm going to do is to take up 5 aspects of these electoral outcomes. The first is to look at the challenge to the hegemony of BJP, the Bhartiya Janta Party. The second part is the return of the regional political players. The third is the India alliance. Then there are issues that were raised or rather emerged during the elections. Then there is this very important issue of the spoilers, the vote cutters or B team or C team, and which is also an important point that needs discussion. And the lastly, I'll talk a little bit about the surveys that are conducted for the exit polls. All of these are important, not just for understanding the outcome of this election, but also for the future elections and the electoral processes. Now, to begin with, of course, this election without doubt has challenged the hegemony of the Bharatiya Janta Party. The BJP came to power in 2014, of course, in alliance with all the regional political parties. But the numbers they obtained were so huge that BJP itself became absolutely comfortable in the parliament. After 2014, in 2019, BJP got enough numbers that they did not even require the support of regional political parties to form the government. And at this point, it is important to remember that throughout the 1990s, the Bharatiya Janta Party made strategic alliances with all the regional parties in each and every state to enter the state assemblies as well as parliament. That it is by making an alliance with the regional political parties that BJP was able to hold ground in the electoral arena. That without making an alliance with the Akali Dal or the Shiv Sena or the AIDMK, or you have any kind of different regional political parties, BJP would not have grown as a political party. And therefore, in order to understand 2014 results, we have to take into account the history of these alliances. And it is precisely this kind of electoral arrangement that BJP had with regional political parties that the BJP tried to neutralize. In 2019, when BJP won with a thumping majority, what happened in the next 5 years that we see is that they tried to neutralize the regional political players. One of the ways to do was to induct all these many of these important regional players into the BJP party itself. The second part, what they did, is to raise the issues as their own issue, which were raised by the regional political parties. Of course, we all know the long story in terms of the usage of the state agencies, whether it is the Enforcement Directorate or the Central Bureau of Investigation, to weaken the regional political parties. I think the classic example of this weakening of the regional political parties is that of the Shiv Sena in Maharashtra and the Nationalist Congress Party. Of course, we all know the results, and I'll come to that discussion in a bit. On the other hand, they also managed to put two sitting chief ministers behind the bars. So these are all the events that we can see that as far as the BJP is concerned, that despite using all these mechanisms, despite having the entire media at their disposal, all these instruments actually did not really help them to garner enough votes so that they can actually have government on their own strength. Right now, they are back to the situation of maybe 1998 or 99 and or previous situation where they have to dependent on the regional political parties. Today, the TDP in Andhra Pradesh and the JDU, the Janta Dal United, these are the two important regional political parties who actually hold key to the formation of government at the center in New Delhi. So whether it is the India Alliance or whether it is the BJP, they cannot form the government without these political parties. Now, this itself is a sign that I call as the return of regional politics. So the regional political parties became extremely important throughout the 80s, late 80s, 1990s. And now, after the BJP came to power, somehow through various reasons, through various infighting, through aspirations within the political parties, the regional political parties had become a little bit weakened. And therefore, what we see very importantly in 2024 elections is the return of regional political parties. Now, interestingly, if we look at a minor history of regional political parties, whether these are based on language or region, in the post-independence era, these regional parties were seen as a threat to the national integrity of this country. That regionalism is not good. We are just had the experience of partition of this country, and therefore the idea was that we should avoid any form of claims about region or languages. And interestingly, now these very regional political parties are seen as a bulwark against the authoritarian regimes in the country. So, as time changes, the nature of these political parties also change. Now, interestingly, you have return of most political parties. So, Samajwadi Party in Uttar Pradesh has revived in a significant manner. You have Janta Dal United. Rashtriya Janta Dal did decent performance, but not an excellent performance. Shiv Sena, in fact, both the Shiv Senas actually managed to gain decent number of seats. You have Nationalist Congress Party actually doubling the performance, like they had 4 seats, now they have 9 seats. Then TDP, you have DMK, Trinamool Congress. So these are all regional political parties. They actually did a good performance compared to their previous elections. As far as the national political party, Congress also has done exceptionally well in gaining 100 seats. Now, one of the important, of course, decisions of the opposition parties was to form this India Alliance, which initially didn't seem that effective. If we look at the situation from February, March, and April, or early April, the India Alliance didn't seem that it will probably be able to tackle the BJP government during elections. But interestingly, there are several strategies that the India Alliance deployed, which helped them to fight the BJP in several places and gain a good number of seats. Asang started with this note about Apki Bar 400 Par, that is the BJP's initial slogan about the target of having 400 seats. Now, interestingly, at the very beginning, when these claims were made about having 400 seats, they were directly linked to the changing of constitution. And what happened is this particular narrative has to be seen in a longer context, but let's set the context first. That once this claim was made about changing the constitution, it didn't really go very well. And at this point, let me highlight one thing, that the CSDS survey, what they said in March, somewhere in March, that in terms of popularity, they did the survey about what do people think of the mood of the nation survey. And there they actually found that Modi was still the popular leader in terms of percentages. And yes, there is unemployment, but youth saw that there is no other option. And in fact, one can say that it may be this reason that the BJP was pretty comfortable about going for elections. And they announced the elections in April already. But immediately, this kind of slogan backfired BJP to the extent that if you look from first phase to the third or fourth phase, that very important leaders kept kept actually avoiding this question and making long clarifications. And this is very important, that they had long clarifications on all the channels saying that they are not interested in changing the constitution. And if they wanted to change the constitution, they would have done it earlier because they had sufficient number. But by then, this had backfired already. And no matter how much the BJP and its leaders tried to do the damage control, it had already gone through its hands. And of course, the opposition also made good use of this opportunity. And I think in this regard, the opposition played a very different role compared to 2014 elections. That they went aggressive rather than constantly on a defensive mode and explanatory. That they actually went on offensive mode in terms of attacking the BJP. And BJP themselves, usually it's the BJP who sets the topic, and then the opposition parties begins to play around the same field. But this time around, BJP lost this narrative from the first round itself. And that broke their morale. And in fact, if this election wouldn't have gone in 7 phases, we would have had probably different results. But first phase set a negative tone for the BJP with this Ab Ki Baar 400 Par. Of course, there are other issues, and I'm coming to them as well. And that had a spiraling effect on different kinds of states where polling was to take place. And therefore, once they lost this one big thing in terms of holding on to their constituencies or appealing to a wider constituencies, this did not happen. But one thing that actually, particularly the liberal intelligentsia, the liberal civil society or the left civil society has not appreciated enough in terms of the constitution, is that constitution as a document and the importance that it has in terms of its rights to the marginalized groups in general has been rather upheld, particularly by Dalit Ambedkarites historically. That if you look at the history of constitution, that to make it a popular kind of text, their role is extremely important. Because no other community had actually given any importance to the constitution as a document. Maybe some lawyers in their some writings or judges may have said something about constitution. But as a community, and to make it a popular document, I think the Dalit Ambedkarites have played an extremely vital role. One of the ways people did that is through the shahirs, the poets, and through various kind of cultural movements. And one of the interesting things is that it is through these songs they would explain the importance of each and every constitution article, about right to equality, right against right to be not discriminated, the abolition of untouchability. Through these songs, all these articles are explained to the people, because people might say that constitution is such a sophisticated document. How are these uneducated people to know about the importance of this document? But it is through this long-standing tradition of jalsas, what we call in Maharashtra, that of course there are different forms that take place in different parts of country. But this is an important role that is played by these kind of cultural groups who actually have made the importance of this document to the common masses. And if this was not done, all this char so par kind of BJP slogan would not have backfired, because you need that popular consciousness within among the people that this is an important document. Of course, then in the last 5 years, there are also non-Ambedkarite organizations who have also picked up the document of Constitution. But in terms of its popular appeal, there is no other community other than Dalit Ambedkarite who have actually upheld the importance of Constitution. And in fact, if you go to Ambedkar's birth anniversary on 14th April or 6th December, people just buy Constitution as a document all the time. I think that's one of the days where the copies of Constitution get sold in large numbers. The second point here, which is linked to the Constitution, is to the celebration of Constitution Day of 26th November. Now, while for several people this becomes a BJP event, but for the last 40 years or so, this has been done by mostly Ambedkarite organizations of various kinds. They could be in the form of the Bahujan organizations or Ambedkarite organizations. I remember as a student of JNU in 2005, then it was Bahujan Vidyarthi, some Parishad or something. And they decided to organize a Constitution Day celebration. And then the Constitution was not at all part of the discussion on JNU campus or anywhere. And so this is the importance that needs to be also remembered, that suddenly people don't remember, because I'm pretty confident that the liberals will forget the importance of Constitution once a non-BJP government comes to power. But this is a very important information that we need to keep in mind. Now, what exactly happens with this kind of these kind of narrative? The moment this narrative is changed, and BJP usually is not on defensive, it's always on the offensive. And once BJP went on defensive, all other issues also got actually a voice. The issue of unemployment, the issue of inflation, the farmers' agitation, all these important issues became absolutely the part of discussion. But you need that one particular moment which actually opens the door for all kinds of issues. And of course, the Constitution became an important issue in terms of the rights that it assigns to different sections of the society. And of course, then there were issues of unemployment, inflation, which were very much around. And these issues got really into the people's appeal. So it had to be a combination of the Constitution, the inflation, the unemployment issue, and in terms of development. So all these became a issue of questioning the ruling political party. And it is here we see that the voluntary participation from the supporters of BJP went pretty much down, that they were unable to defend the BJP's agenda or BJP as a political party on social media or any form of public forums. If you look at the history from prior to from 2014 to 2020, 22, 23, a common BJP support was very much vocal about supporting the political party. But somehow, once this narrative was lost in April, the supporters actually did not see very, there is no reason for them to go and support, or they rather saw that the anger or the opposition to these kind of issues is so strong that they just decided to, go into hiding in some way. And in fact, in some of the constitutions that I was in touch with some newspaper journalists, they told me that these supporters are also angry, but they have decided to go for Nota rather than voting for any other political party. So you can see that, of course, so both processes were happening at the same time. So BJP was losing the narrative. They were also not able to hold on to, the floating constituencies. And their own constituency more or less have stuck with them. That's what also the post-poll results from the survey showed us. Now, the other thing which actually the media pretty much did not highlight is the Bharat Jodo Yatra by Congress leader Rahul Gandhi. Both the Bharat Jodo Yatra initially and then the Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra. And I think this is an important for any political leader. And from the history of Indian politics, we know that whoever does these yatras either through walking or through cycle yatra, as Manyavar Kanshiram did, or now Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra. It does have an impact on connecting the leader with the population. And if at all the media was, even in 10% in favor of Congress party, I think they would have even performed better in the elections. Of course, one can discuss later what exactly these issues were. I mean, they were all linked to unemployment, inflation, social justice. And there are also critiques of these yatras in terms of what kind of issues they could not address. So that can be a part of discussion. But as far as the elections are concerned, the Bharat Jodo Yatra actually did have a positive impact for the party's performance. And they were able to also, as a political party, despite being a national party, what they smartly did is they also made adjustment with the seats. They also took back seat in terms of taking smaller number of seats in several states where they felt that they are not strong enough. And overall, I think this actually helped them to obtain this huge number. To the extent that now, if the two regional players, one in Bihar and one in Andhra Pradesh, decide to switch parties, you never know that, we can have different kind of government. But the most important part here is that at this moment, given this particular kind of situation, we have thankfully not a majboot sarkar, but we have a majboor sarkar. And as Kanshiram used to say, that you need a majboor sarkar because it is only a little vulnerable government that actually listen to the people's questions. And if the more stronger the government, this is actually not of much use for people's concerns. Now, here I'll just speak a little bit about the use of social media. And I think this election has been about the use of social media, either YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all kinds of small regional channels. These are channels of regional languages in Hindi, in Urdu, in Punjabi, in Bengali. And these were the small little channels that actually were able to take a different kind of agenda to the masses. And this actually posed a major challenge to the mainstream media, which is funded by the big capital, the big business houses, and they are also controlled by them. And we could see how they actually manage several issues. Now, one of the things, of course, we all know the results and people, in what direction we are going right now. But one of the issues that actually constantly keeps coming up election after election, and it's become a fashionable term, is the spoilers. To term certain political parties as a spoiler or vote cutters or B team or C team. In large number of cases, these are also political parties whose mass base constitutes the Dalit or the Bahujan communities. And these parties are largely targeted. Of course, it's predominantly Dalit-based political parties are the ones which are usually targeted as spoilers or vote cutters. And this is absolutely a fashionable term that the left and liberal commentators have used year after year in the elections. And in fact, 2014 elections, once BJP won with a thumping majority, one of the commentators, without any backup of any statistical data, any analysis, wrote a very loose commentary in a mainstream paper saying that Dalit politics has taken a rightward shift. And immediately after that election, in Delhi, we have Aam Aadmi Party government. Then in Bihar, we have different kind of government. And since 2014, we have all kinds of shifts in government. So these kind of loose comments are constantly made. And I decided that let me spend like a couple of minutes on this. Now, if we are to look at this particular election, largely they were targeting the Bahujan Samaj Party in Uttar Pradesh and the Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi in Maharashtra state. And most of them were accusing them of either being B team of BJP or for being the spoiler. Now, I'll just cite two examples. So the first example is that of the first MP BJP won in Kerala. Now, this MP polled roughly 400,000 votes. But if we look at the candidate who was second after this candidate, which was the Communist Party of India candidate, who won 337,000 votes in the elections. And on the third position was a Congress party candidate who also won 300,000 plus votes. So one can also say, call here Congress party a spoiler or a Communist Party of India candidate a spoiler, depending on where we want to target. The second example, and this is the only example I'm taking, this is a Talmud constituency in West Bengal. Here the BJP won the seat. On the second number is the Trinamool party candidate. And on the third, we have the Communist Party of India Marxist candidate. Now again, one can argue that either Trinamool should have not contested or Communist Party of India Marxist should not have conducted in order for BJP to not win the election. However, we don't see any discourse on either Trinamool Congress being targeted as a spoiler party, or you don't see Communist Party of India or Communist Party of India Marxist being seen as a spoiler party. And therefore, there is a clear caste element in terms of which parties get targeted as a spoiler party. And therefore, we need to look at these kind of political parties in a larger perspective. Now, what one can actually see here is the question of strategy. So one can definitely question that should the BJP, BSP, the Bahujan Samaj Party or the Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi, should they have gone with the India Alliance? And these questions have emerged because both these political parties have failed to obtain even one seat in the parliament elections. Of course, this is a simple statement one can make that both these political parties with Dalit mass base have failed to sense the pulse of their own people. That in order to also make any kind of adjustments or an alliance, this is not to say that the BSP has not done an alliance in the past, or even Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi has not done some small adjustments. But I think this is where the failure of these political parties lie, is to sense the pulse of the people, that their own people felt that these political parties where their otherwise loyalties lie, they should have actually went in alliance with the India Alliance. But at the same time, a minor comment here, we must also understand the importance of these political parties. That India is not a two-party system like the United States. India is a multi-party democracy, and every smaller group or community has the right to form political party. And in fact, these are the very smaller political parties who have raised important issues about discrimination, about representation, about the educational opportunities, which otherwise the mainstream upper caste political parties would have never raised. And the threat of losing elections because of these parties also means that you have to deploy the language of social justice. So the importance of these political parties remain. Of course, one can actually disagree on their mode of operation. But as I just gave some examples of other political parties, and they have also, played their own part in spoiling the chances of the larger India alliance to come into power. So these have to be put in context. And if you only target one or two political parties, we are reproducing a stereotype, which of course has a very strong caste element. This is not to say again that these political parties should not have won. Maybe they should have won. But most political parties think about their own turf in terms of maintaining their own political party. And this is the way most political parties function. This whole idea about BJP being this fascist political party, then we have to fight fascism, is actually not taken seriously even from 2014 or even before. And in terms of electoral adjustments, no bigger or smaller political party has made these kind of adjustments. So I just wanted to put these kind of spoiler or B team, C team kind of argument in a perspective of multi-party democracy, where even a smaller political party actually has a role to play. And it is precisely for this reason, Jitaram Manji, who comes from the Musahar community, is now the cabinet minister. There is absolutely no need for the BJP to do that. But it is precisely because of these smaller political parties, which can actually play an important role, that they have to give representation to them. You have Ramdas Athavale, who actually did not contest any elections, and yet he is still the Minister of State with independent charge of the Social Justice Ministry. And these are some important considerations that as scholars, as commentators, we need to think about. Now, the last part is about the surveys. And I'll just take few, like just 2-3 minutes more, and then I'll wrap up. The first part here is about the surveys. And one of the things that became very obvious is the exit polls. That after the elections, all the exit polls gave a dramatically different result. And that is linked to the share market scam, and this is open. And in fact, several people I know made their decision to invest in particular kind of shares based on the exit polls. And this is a common kind of experience with most people who invest in different kinds of shares and companies, that just by following the exit polls, several people made those decisions. Now, obviously, we don't it has become a business in terms of like just producing certain numbers. And interestingly enough, I attended some events in Delhi, and these companies or whatever these number crunchers kept defending these numbers that okay, we got the seat wrong, but we got the percentage right. And this is something that is absolutely important in terms of what these companies do. But there is, of course, one particular agency which has a respectable name in terms of election analysis, and this is and they have a decent reputation, I must say, with all the limitations. But I think, as a student of political science, one of the mistakes I think they have done in the last few years, and in fact, they have provided for the growth also of the right-wing government. This is not to say that they are the ones who have pushed it. But for example, one of the questions they asked in their Mood of the Nation survey is about the popularity of one particular leader. And they gave them options of, let's say, 10 leaders. Now, this is absolutely a very problematic question in the first place, because India is not a presidential system like the United States, where you check the popularity of the main leader and that is going to decide. India is a parliamentary democracy where whichever party wins the majority of seats eventually decides who will become the prime minister. But this is where these kind of surveys produce inequality for political parties. That obviously you will have Narendra Modi because they have the massive agency at their disposal. You have the media. You also have the entire government machinery, which is using the face of that particular leader on all kinds of occasions. And of course, there are other national parties like the Congress who also have a decent amount of reach. And it is here that all the regional political parties are absolutely at disadvantage with such questions. That you will never have a straight answer about, let's say, Siddaramaiah, who is the Chief Minister of Karnataka, whether he is the popular leader across the country. You will never have that kind of thing even about the TDP leader, who is now the Chief Minister of Andhra, or for that matter, any regional leader in Maharashtra or Bengal. Maybe Bengal to a certain extent, but not necessarily. So my view about this particular survey, also this particular one question, is that this is actually a deeply problematic question, because exactly by using the credibility of such organizations, the media can actually use those figures to bombard the people with by saying that, look, as per this survey, which has all the credibility, this leader is still the most popular. Whereas we don't really follow that model. In every constituency, it is that particular representative who has to win. But by doing this particular kind of logic in terms of questioning these kind of people on this survey and then producing results, which are obviously going to be biased given the kind of infrastructure that political party has. And I think these are some of the ways in which we can understand the 2024 elections. I'll stop here. Thank you, Asan, and everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sumit. That was, I would say, with so much clarity and simplicity, but so much depth in terms of covering these very important issues, themes that sort of have come out from the 2024 general elections. Thank you, Sumit. So I have at least 6 questions. I'll stop. I will not ask the 6 questions. What I'll do is actually I'll open up the floor to give,
Yes.
and I think it's very overwhelmed. I mean, I'm personally very overwhelmed by the response of about 64, 67 participants joining us. So I think it's my duty as a moderator to sort of just let open up the floor, and I think I'll reserve my questions for the end. So the floor is now open for questions. My request it will be to please unmute yourself or perhaps raise your hand first, and then I will just call out your name. Then you can unmute. And please keep your questions to only 30 seconds. I know that you would want to interact with Dr. Mhaskar, and there are other avenues, but because we want to get as many people's questions out of the 63 participants that we have, that will be my request. So the floor is now open. You can raise your hands if you have a question. Sumit, meanwhile, people, raise their hands and ask questions. I'll actually start by asking at least one question to you, and this was about
Please, yeah.
uh, BJP and RSS, really, and that sort of when we uh, heard, and I think all of us heard Mohan Bhagwat's comments about Modi, and when he made those comments in Nagpur, can we understand that as discontent and cracks starting to appear between the BJP and the RSS? Or do you think it's more of a power move by RSS in trying to um, uh, come out and criticize Modi and BJP the way the elections were run? How do you contextualize it?
Thanks, Asang. This is an important question. And see, one of the things very interesting about BJP and RSS is that there are moments where we feel that there is a struggle between the two, which is the case. But at the end of the day, it becomes a family affair. And when it comes to family, you protect the family. Okay? You forget all your differences and you protect the family. So you will, make some statements which may feel like, okay, there is some trouble in that particular or between the two organizations. But never ever have we seen that these kind of conflicts have actually led to the fall of the BJP. That the RSS never takes a position and tells its cadres that go and vote against. So it's a family matter, I would say, in a very simplistic terms, that yes, in all families, trouble happens, and but at the end of the day, people stand with the family. So that is my short answer here.
Thanks, Sumit. Anyone else? I think Prashant had a question. Oh, sure, there was a chat.
I think I
Oh,
can
Meena?
also
Yeah.
see.
Professor
Yeah,
hand.
Meena is there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Sumeet. So,
Hi,
very,
Meena.
yeah, very, very insightful talk. I have a question about what, in your view, is the BSP's long-term plan? I agree that in any particular election, it isn't possible to say on the basis of the way they pitch themselves this time, whether or not they're keeping themselves separate helped or didn't help, because there are arguments both ways. They might have helped India Alliance also in some cases, as much as people accuse them of having helped the BJP in other places. So I think this is an open question, really, if you look seat by seat. But an assessment and evaluation of any party's politics, I think, has to be seen in a more long-term sense. So I'm not clear. I really do not know. I mean, it's a question asking you to tell me, what is BSP's long-term prospect? What, for example, would they want to do in the next election? So that will help me to understand, evaluate them now.
Yeah, I think this is, of course, there are two responses to this. One is the response which only their own party leadership can tell us. But as a scholar, the thing is that, like any political party goes through different phases in terms of its ups and downs, and they have to revive them. Now, the thing is that the logics that were used during the initial growth of BSP in the 80s and 90s or even 2000s, those logics do not remain the same. The issues are still important. The issues of discrimination and exclusion, the representation, these still remain absolutely important. But at the same time, now the aspirations of the people they represent have changed in some, because, and that also applies to Maharashtra or other places, that you need, and there was a moment, in my view, of confrontational politics, that you don't care whether you win or lose, but the confronting the other political parties was very important. And Kalcharam had a strategy back then, that first election to lose, second to make them lose, one party, and the third is for winning the elections. But that formula probably may not work in the present context. Maybe there is something else that needs to be done. And that's why I raised the question about the pulse of the people, their own voters. Because their own voters felt very strongly that their party should go in alliance with the India kind of combination. And that was very clear in Maharashtra for sure. UP was a little surprised because no one expected the Samajwadi Party to perform so well, in fact. But in Maharashtra, it was very clear that from the ground up, it was the appeals were made to go in alliance, and that actually they showed in the voting patterns as well. So as far as long-term plans are concerned, my view is that if as a party they have to survive, any political party, they have to revive, and they have to also address issues in a newer manner. Because at the end of the day, it's also about the rhetoric, how you appeal to the masses, and also what kind of strategies you make. Because one small point here is that several political parties also test their strength in the Lok Sabha parliamentary elections in order to make preparations for the state assembly elections. That many parties do that. That the reason they actually go ahead with this is to test their strength. In fact, Shiv Sena and BJP are alliance partners, but several times in several places they have contested independently in order to see where they stand. And so have Congress and the Nationalist Congress Party. Because once they win the election, then they will decide who will be the chief minister based on their performance. Sometimes they do that. So political parties, of course, have taken different route. BSP is an important political party as far as in terms of Dalit politics is concerned. But as of now, we don't see a new strategy. And the last point here about BSP is that BSP has never been a party with a massive fanfare in terms of making public statement. It has been a party of mostly underground party going through the absolutely ground network, to the cadre-based party, and the cadre is supposed to take the message of the party. It never had a support of mainstream media, even though now it is now very much in favor of the ruling political party. And even when the media was relatively neutral, one may say, even then the media was never in favor of this. So therefore, BSP strategy was never public. And therefore, we will not know what actually they do in future also, honestly speaking. Yeah.
Thanks, Sumit. So there's a question in the chat from Nidhi Solanki, and she is asking, seeing BJP losing seats in this election and forming a coalition government, I'm also hearing from people that this government will not last for more than 2 years, and we may have elections again. What do you think?
I mean, these are all speculative questions, but one thing is clear. I mean, also that is very much part of Nidhi's question, is that it's not a stable government. That the day these two regional political parties decide to pull off, the government will go away and a new government might come. So therefore, it's a vulnerable situation. That said, no political party also wants to lose power. So no matter how many adjustments the BJP will have to make, and especially Narendra Modi, because he's the Prime Minister and he wants to retain his aura, all kinds of adjustments will be made. And right now, we still don't know who will be the Speaker of Lok Sabha. Traditionally, the TDP has always bargained for that position. And the Janata Dal United may also bargain or may extend support from outside, which means that you are constantly in a vulnerable position. So unless and until those kind of crises emerge, we may not necessarily have elections. Either and any political party would like to stay in power. No political party wants to stay outside the power circle. So if these two political parties decide to pull off and go towards the India alliance, they may form the government. So these are all speculative questions, and we'll have to wait, like, sudden, if there are kind of these kind of constitution change, Charso Par Narayan, that shifts the narrative. Similar kind of movement happens, and that might change. But as of now, we don't know, because also there is Maharashtra, Haryana, and Jharkhand. They are going for polls in October.
Yeah.
Maharashtra, the situation already looks very difficult for BJP, given their also current performance. Haryana too, and Jharkhand as well. So it's very tight. And once these things happen, even within the BJP, there would be voices who would challenge several things. So it's not just BJP versus others. Even within the BJP, there might be possibilities of discussion around. So that is the open question.
Yeah, thanks, Sumeet. That was important one. I questions in the chat. I'll just read it out. So Viba's question is about EVMs and proxy voting, and basically she's asking is that there was a lot of apprehension about EVMs and proxy voting, especially coming from social media, and she's asking what is the feeling now? Was it a fear of the ruling party tampering with EVMs, or does the credit for pleasantly surprising result go to people being extra vigilant due to these fears?
I think the EVM worry still remains, because at least on the Twitter, there are several people who have shown inconsistency in terms of the actual number of voters and the number of votes counted by the EVM machine. And there has been discrepancy, not just for one constituency, but for several constituencies. And I think there is one scholar, Aniket Aga, who has put up this list, and anyone can go and check these kind of statistics. So I think the worry still remains. And in fact, one of the constituencies in Mumbai was one with like some 48 some vote margin. And there itself, there has been like discussions around whether certain OTP was used by that particular candidate's son or some relative. And so that concern still remains. And I don't think that is going to go away just because these people have won. But we have to see if the movement against EVM picks up again. Yeah. And that also depends on political parties, assessment of whether this issue will also help them. For example, the caste census did not really become that big issue because it was not really appealing to the masses in terms of particularly the other backward castes. That initially the idea was that the other backward caste would actually rally around the caste census, but that kind of response was not that at all visible, and therefore that did not become an issue. And so as far as EVM is concerned, we will have to probably wait for that moment when it becomes an issue for the party.
Right. Thanks, Sumit. So I'm just going to club two questions. So from Yuraj and Shivanand. So Yuraj has asked about a very important question, according to me, about Chandrasekhar Ravan and the rise of Azad Samaj Party. So he's asking about your views on that contributing to the future of Dalit politics. And Shivanand has asked, how has Congress party benefited from another Dalit leader, Mallikarjun Kharge's leadership in the general elections? And then I'll come to the other questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think this is one thing that we must remember as far as Dalits and electoral politics is concerned, that if we leave out certain regions in the country, it's not necessarily, Dalit population is not necessarily in a position to, change the narrative of elections, so to say. That the numbers are weak. And even in the reserve constituencies, and this is the point that needs to be highlighted, That just because it's a reserve constituency doesn't mean that Dalits actually have the power to change in terms of who will win or lose the elections. Because Dalits have to be dependent either on other groups such as the other backward caste or the upper caste groups or the Muslims in order to make sure that they win the election. So if there is a BJP as a party decides to put together all different kinds of groups and not rely at all on Dalit votes, they can still get their candidates to the parliament or assembly. And therefore, it will always be a challenge. Now, as far as Chandrasekhar Ravan is concerned, I think it's any kind of victory, eventually gives a little bit of promise to the people. And him going to the parliament obviously will help in terms of because he already has a media popularity. And so if he speaks up in the parliament on important issues, it's going to be very important. But as far as the future is concerned, we'll have to wait and see because we don't know how far he can actually break into, let's say, the BSP's kind of space. Because at the end of the day, he will have to break into BSP space in order to create a space for himself, even though he's right now relying on all kind of formations. But eventually that is the case. And that actually highlights the part which I just said earlier, is about the aspirations. The community aspirations have changed now. This whole idea of confrontation is now also there, but at the same time, they think that their leaders should also go to the parliament or assembly. That winning election is also equally important. It's not just to contest election now, winning is important. And therefore, any kind of adjustments made are actually fine. Not in a sense like extreme adjustments, but in reasonable limits. If adjustments are made, I think this is what I can see from these particular elections. Now, as far as Mallikarjun Kharge is concerned, I think this is, of course, Congress has benefited immensely because he is an exceptional leader, somebody whom you cannot call a puppet. He has grown from the grassroots, and he speaks Marathi, he speaks Kannada, he speaks Hindi, English, and I don't know if some other languages. And that actually helps him to connect with so many political leaders across the country. And he is somebody who is seen as a very firm political leader within the Congress party. And I think this is we can see that a time about a shift in Congress as well in terms of giving that space to somebody who is a Dalit, but who is also explicitly embracing Buddhism, who is explicitly embracing Ambedkar. And that kind of change that we can see here within the Congress. Now, whether this will translate into the different kind of social justice issues that we will have to see. But what we see right now, of course, Congress has benefited immensely from Mallikarjun Kharge's leadership. He's an exceptional speaker also in the parliament. And also he's a fantastic strategist. One has to give it to him, whether we agree with him or not. So that way the party has benefited for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Sumit. And I think if you can see the chat, it is sort of loaded with questions.
Okay.
But I think what I'll do is, and I'll moderate because we already are past the 1 hour mark. So I think we can give about 10 or 15 more minutes to discuss. So I'll now invite Navneet and after that Narendra to ask their questions. And then I'll ask you the questions from the chat. So Navneet.
Hi, sir. It was an insightful session. And my question might sound bogus, but I'm still asking. I have to ask. This has been ringing my brains for a really long time. So you started off the session with 400 400 bar, and this has really backfired BJP. So my question is, can you really attribute this to a particular section of the society? If they're voting, they voted differently, and that has led to a backfiring?
Okay, thank you. No, this is actually a very good question. I don't know why you doubted yourself, but no, it's an excellent question. The first thing is that in terms of backfiring is a narrative. As far as voting is concerned, BJP may have had a small section of that vote from the Dalit constituency, let's say. And also these are different kinds of, because Dalit is not one caste. There are wide-ranging communities within the Dalit group. And of course, some of them, they were able to mobilize historically. And that, of course, really backfired. Now, when I say backfired, also means that then people go on a very offensive move. So backfire doesn't mean that they have to constantly defend, but then once you're constantly attacked on that particular ground, then it becomes difficult for you to even answer other kinds of questions. You can't do what about. You can't say, oh, they were like the BJP's popular kind of answer. The Congress was ruling for 70 years. What did they do? They were not in a position to pull any of that. So backfired, yes, very strongly. And most importantly, in addition to backfiring, the India Alliance picked up that narrative. They would not have picked up this narrative otherwise. They would not, like, you would not have Shiv Sena picking up this narrative, for example, in Maharashtra, the constitution narrative. But given their own vulnerabilities, this actually struck a chord across a range of groups. And so there are different people treat differently. Political parties saw this as a moment to defend their own interests. You have Dalits who clearly saw that they need to defend their interests because this is the document that provides them the minimum protection that is required. In terms of its interpretation of constitution, actually various groups treated it differently, and therefore you have a merger of various groups on this issue. And this is what I would say. I hope it answers your concern.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Narendra Yadav.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Asang and Sumeet, for this wonderful talk and for the insightful things you have shared with us. So my question is that during this 2022 assembly election, and I did my fieldwork among Nisat community in Western UP. So what I found during the fieldwork is that the leadership that has trained by the BSP in 80 or 90, so that has totally left the party and they have joined in the several other parties. Okay. And right now, not the party has that kind of, if I'm not wrong, they do not have that kind of training schools or the training environment, and also, and it totally has stopped in the party. So how you are seeing this the impact of this nurturing this new leadership, and right now this BSP is not performing the way we have expectation from the party. And it also impacted the confidence of the supporters or the karyakartas, those who are willing to join the party. So how you see that these all things, how impacting the future of the party? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Narendra. So just 1 minute. There's another question which is similar by Shrikant K. And the question is, what are the prospects for Dalit and Bahujan politics over the next 15 years and the potential role of Bahujan youth in politics? So I'm just going to club these questions.
Okay, right. So I think, Narendra, I think this is a very important observation, and this is also goes in line with several other kind of commentators. That yes, as a political party, especially cadre-based political, whether it is RSS, whether it's organizations, I would say, not party, but any organization, whether it's Shiv Sena, whether it's a Communist Party, whether it's BSP, these are all cadre-based parties. Now, a cadre needs to be constantly informed, constantly met, and they have to shape their ideological moorings constantly. You have to constantly tell them that this is what the party thinks on each and every question. Now, obviously, post BSP coming to power, I think some of these things had become weakened. And especially in 2007, when Mayawati became, chief minister, that actually had a kind of different kind of impact. That once you taste the power with full majority, you tend to overlook the foundations, and that may have been the case. And therefore, definitely, I mean, if they are cadre-based party, they have to go back to their roots and revive their cadre. And that again connects to the second question about the prospects that any political party, particularly those who are Dalit political parties or Bahujan political parties, they will never have enough resources or the kind of instruments available with a non-Dalit political party or the upper caste party in terms of reaching out to the masses. Their issues will never become national issues. Their issues had to be, first of all, if their own constituency is not convinced about the issues, then in that case, they don't have much chance. So as far as the politics is concerned, the autonomy of Dalit politics is also extremely important. And that's why I said that even if you can call the Vanchit Bahujan a spoiler or BSP a spoiler, their importance is there in terms of raising the issues. Now, whether they are successful or not, this is something that we need to analyze. Whether they actually can address the pulse of the people, one view is that they should have gone with this alliance, won the seats, and then in the parliament, they could have raised these issues consistently. So right now, this is a big space that is vacant. Now, how eventually strategies happen, and as I said that as far as the Dalit and Bahujan youth are concerned, it's a very different approach they're taking now. They're taking an approach of reaching close to the power and not always being in confrontation mode. They want their leaders to become part of the government. They want their leaders to become part of the member of parliaments or assemblies. And it's not an election just to lose the election. No contesting just for losing. And I think that is the mode as of now we see. And looks like that is going to be the case for at least another 10, 15 years. And if the political leaders understand this impulse about the people that they are interested also in going to the parliament in terms of their own leaders, then probably they would have got the people right, and that could be a success, for any political party.
Yeah. Thank you, Sumit. So I think we just have time for one last question. We're already 10 minutes over our time. And I think I'll go with the last question in the chat of Professor Abhinaya.
Okay.
She's asking about the patriarchy in the political parties.
In political party.
Yeah, and including Ambedkarite Dalits and Dalits in the left. So I think the question, if I understand it right, is why is there still the sort of the patriarchal approach to the political parties, especially within the Dalit Ambedkarites and Dalit left as well? And what can we do to overcome that?
I think as far as, because we are discussing the issue of elections, and in the context of elections and representative politics, if this 33% reservation bill is eventually comes to implementation, then that will open up a bigger space for women to enter parliament. Now, of course, it creates limitations in terms of the quota within the quota. That debate remains. But as far as this is concerned, once you have that gate opened up, that can open up different kinds of possibilities. And of course, women entering parliament can also lead to raising those particular questions, which are, broader part of patriarchy. So that's what I'll say. And of course, as far as whether it's a left government or any other political party, not government, their particular approach towards the caste question will remain as long as the anti-caste organizations are able to keep their own questions alive. As long as they keep the questions raising, these political parties will have to give at least a lip service, and in some cases also create a space. But this is an ongoing struggle. This is not going to stop at some point that, okay, after 2050, the party is going to change. No party is going to change, because we have to understand, particularly elections, that this is also about the distribution of resources. It's about controlling the economic power. It's controlling political power. And that is something no party wants to just give up so easily. And given our system, the way it works, and caste still decides what kind of occupations you can do, what kind of businesses you can do, who gets to do business with the government, who benefits from the government policies. As long as that is the case, no political party is actually going to be 100% pro-Dalit in terms of, okay, let's distribute and have equitable distribution, whether in terms of business or resources. This is a fight about competing with rights in terms of whether your rights gets heard or not. And your rights get, as far as elections are concerned, yes, you show your strength that you can vote differently, and then the party has to listen to you. Even then they may not. That's also the case, but times have changed, and it's possible that some distribution may happen. But as long as distribution is linked, this is a constant fight that will always happen.
Thank you, Sumit. I think I'll draw the session to a close by first of all acknowledging and thanking Professor Mhaskar for joining us and for this great engagement, 1.5 hours of engagement. And also thank you for all the participants for these very important questions that I would say. I mean, out of the 6 questions that I have, I think 3 or 4 were already asked, and I was like very happy about that sort of the depth and the level of engagement as well. For the rest, please stay tuned to our other programs that we are gonna initiate in our Oxford Ambedkar Initiatives Summer Lecture Series. And if you have any feedback or questions, you can always write to us. And thank you so much for joining us today. And this has been recorded, so we'll make sure that we do a good job in uploading this to our YouTube channel ASAP so that you can sort of spread this session. So thank you again, Sumit, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Jai